Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Leaders Den podcast. And today I'll be talking to Tricia Karp, and I'm really honored to have her here. She has been a role model and a mentor to me. And actually, thanks to Tricia, I wrote and published my own book dealing with conflict because at the time I started my business, I was really, what do I do, and I met Tricia, and she helped me kind of find some guidance. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here on the podcast with me, Tricia.
You are welcome, Thilan. Hello.
Hey, and you are a woman with so many facets, and you have done so much. So I would really want to ask you to introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and where you're coming from. And then I would love to have a conversation about leadership and wherever that's going to take us.
Sure. All right. So I am an Australian and I'm now living in Bali. I've been here for nearly 6 months with my daughter who's about to turn 13. But as far as business goes and where I come from, my work's always been about helping people to discover their power and really to push past any limits. I think that for most of us, trying to be who we think we should be in the world or living up to those expectations, we've really forgotten who we are. And what I'm so interested in is guiding people, and this is my own life mission for myself, but back to their power, back to their truth, back to their innocence and their beauty on all different levels. So that's really what I'm about. I'm here to help people remember who they are. And I worked initially with women mostly, but I work with men as well now too.
Yeah. And just for anybody who's listening and thinking what's happening in the background, Tricia is in a beautiful tropical place where there's some internet issues every now and then, and where you are now is the best internet. So we're just taking the background noises as they come. But anyway, the whole thing about empowering people is wonderful. And you're saying you're working both. You used to work with women a lot, but you're working with men as well. And so can you explain a little bit more about empowering people and how important that is for all of us to kind of find our inner leader as well?
Yeah, sure. What I find most, and this is certainly continues to be my own personal experience, which helps drive me in my work as well, is that when we peel back some of the layers and come back to more of who we truly are, there's so much more energy for us. There's so much more freedom and sense of liberation. There's so much more purpose for us. Life becomes better. I'm not saying it always becomes easier because it's hard. It's hard to confront our stories. It's hard to confront our beliefs and our habits and all the things we've lived by. And a lot of us don't even bother until we're in a situation in our lives where things are feeling tough and things aren't flowing the way we want to. And I've certainly had those experiences in my life. I've had all sorts of things over the years, from frustration in a career that I didn't love, and wanting to have my own business, but incredible fear. So much fear and so many beliefs about myself that held me back initially from doing that. So, there's a place in me where I just reach frustration and I have to make a change. But change is hard, and I notice that a lot of us, we don't do it unless we are in a situation where we decide we want that more than what we've currently got. So that's where I come from. I know what's on the other side, but I know how much it takes to access that.
Yes. And I think also what I often see, and also for myself, is that, even though we know about self-limiting beliefs and we know that in a way we are brainwashed from the day we are born, it's often not really so obvious. It takes really time to even understand that what you thought was something you wanted to do is actually maybe not what your core is all about, but it's just something to maybe please your parents or whoever, And
yeah, Absolutely. And I can think of so many experiences in my life where I've gone for things, I've pushed, I've worked really hard, I've been in that zone of striving for success, you know, and I've achieved some of those goals and they meant absolutely nothing to me. They were so shallow. And I can think of one experience that really was quite profound at the time. And I wasn't on the path yet of doing my inner work. I'd started. I was early in the piece, maybe a couple of years in, and I was still working in television. And I'd always had a goal, and I was a journalist back then, a reporter on the news. And I had a goal to read the news on TV. I'd read news on radio, and I wanted to present news on TV. And when it came at a time in my life where I was starting to do that inner work. I was starting to get to know myself a little bit better. I had some experiences on air with a co-presenter. Well, in the ad breaks, no one saw it on air. But I'll never forget this. He picked up the phone in the ad break, so there's a phone at the news desk, and he rang the presenter. And not the presenter, the producer. And he started screaming at her. And he said, "I am the senior newsreader, and she is on air for 30 seconds more than me, and this is not acceptable." And I just sat, you sit very close when you sit at the news desk, it's like this. And I just sat next to him and I listened, and he slammed down the phone. And I said, "Are you right?" Wow. "You're right." And the fact that he had spoken to her that way, these were people I was working with. I thought, none of this aligns with my values or who I am and what I care about. I can't see how any of this is actually really useful. Not just his behaviour, but in the news we were just basically selling fear-based stuff about what's going on in the world. And that was a turning point for me. I just thought, this is bullshit.
Yeah. I'm actually really surprised, pleasantly surprised, that you could even have the empathy to say to him in that space, like, "Are you all right?" You know, because that is just unheard of, and also brings me back to this book I'm reading about egos at the moment. So what is that all about? Yeah. So for you, that was when you talk about that, you were at that time ready to push through your fears of the unknown and a different future for you, because that was for you like a line in the sand. I don't need this in my life.
Yeah, it was a line in the sand. I just thought I could be doing something so much more useful. It's not when I started my business at that point. This was a long time ago, and I didn't know yet. I really didn't know yet what I would do, but I thought, this is not useful, and I don't want to be around these people. They're not my people. I craved to do something useful in the world, you know, like I wanted to be of service, and I just couldn't see how that was. And people started treating me very differently as well when I started presenting the news. So people I worked with who I'd been quite good buddies with, there was jealousy. There were people in the higher, you know, in leadership positions who'd never spoken to me before, but suddenly I was interesting to them. You know, it was just this whole kind of way that it worked. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is not me. I don't care. I mean, I'm reading the news. I was never somebody who was going to go, "Oh, look at me, I'm amazing. I'm news." And that upset people too, that I didn't kind of take it that seriously in that way. That upset a lot of people. And I remember getting my hair cut one time, and I got it cut too short, and I got in trouble for that. You know, it was just like, oh, I can't do this shit.
No, it's interesting, because I think that's the way it often works with groups. If you have a certain status, you're supposed to be. And it's if you don't work along those values and so on, people don't really like that. And if you say, like, I remember that when I was a lawyer and people were a bit like you, I was like, "Oh, when you're a lawyer, they think, I know you go to the High Court and the Supreme Court," and I was like, "No, but I don't want to be a lawyer in a 3-piece suit who is just a horrible person. I'm a human being, and that's the far most." Yeah. So what do you think people need to do to come to that realization in the inner work? When do you know, hey, you need to start working on yourself?
Yeah, I think when life pushes you to a point when you feel like you're in a bit of a corner. I've certainly had that happen a few times. I think when you're in a situation where you just know that it's not right for you, this is not right for me. I don't want to be here. I don't feel like these are my people. I don't feel like I belong here.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. When something doesn't fit with your values, we really need to know what are my values. What are my values in this situation, and can I be in my integrity?
Yeah.
To do this. I think that's part of it. And
And
sometimes it's just a longing for more, right? There's just a deep down knowing that we're meant for something more, that we're not feeling fulfilled in our purpose. And
yeah.
I think that's a powerful one. I've had that for many years. Sometimes took me many years, but just being drawn to something and not knowing why and needing to explore that.
Yeah, so I think what I often see, and what definitely has been for me as well, that sometimes life is so overwhelming and you're just kind of going, you just kind of surviving, but it's those times that you kind of need to stop and listen. And I haven't always been good at that. Listen at your own body, your own gut feeling, and kind of go with that. But what you often see is then people just start, binge watching Netflix or drinking or, all these other mechanisms, while it's maybe, really important sign and you need to do something with it.
Yeah, Thilan, I feel really strongly about that. I think that most of us are so disconnected from ourselves, and I actually think that's probably the biggest problem in the Western culture. And I can say that with a little bit of a different perspective, living here in Bali, and I
Yeah.
talk about this a lot with other expats here. The culture here is community comes first and spirituality comes first, right? And they're so dedicated to their spiritual practice and their community. Depression doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Because of that sense of community and the faith. And you can have, it's hilarious. When I first got here, I would get so cross and annoyed because I'd have to wait forever for traffic because there's a ceremony, walking down the street, right? Now here, everything stops because of that, and that's accepted. If you've got a ceremony, you don't go to work and your employer accepts that, right? We have a housekeeper included as part of our rent. It's like she's not coming today or tomorrow because there's a cremation or there's a special ceremony, and that's just accepted. What I find and what I found for me and why I needed the change is that I was also stuck in the doing and the pushing and the striving and the having to and trying to do all the things that culturally, I think, and in my conditioning and my perfectionism, all the stuff that's expected. And that just didn't work for me anymore. It was like, I can't do my life anymore, and I'd had a couple of bouts of depression, and that's not my thing, it's never been my thing. It's like, this just doesn't work. And that disconnection, it's what I work with people. We've forgotten who we really are in our hearts, in our souls, in our being.
Yes.
And it changes everything when you remember that. It changes your whole world on the outside. But as long as you're in the disconnection, as long as you're trying to shove stuff down, as long as you're drinking or you're binge watching on Netflix and working too many hours a day and not even connecting with anyone around you, you're stuffed. And it's strong language, but it's true. And I think it's such a shame. It's such a shame, and I'll get teary about it.
Yeah.
It's like, I run my retreats here and I have these women coming in stressed and like that. And within a few days, they're back in their hearts, they're back in their beings and back in themselves and remembering, this is who I am,
Yeah, and I do hear what you're saying, that it often takes a really serious event in your life, but it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that we have to wait till we're completely vulnerable and down to the ground. It would be something that, you know, we should have on a regular basis, like a maintenance thing. Like, but often when I do exercises like value exercises, as you were talking about, and it's often in the corporate sphere when I do it, I think most people look at me and they don't really understand in first instance what I'm saying. So, so could you explain a little bit more with values? I mean, we hear the word all the time, but what that means to you, as in when you're aligned to your values, and how you can find out what your values are?
Yeah, sure. So the way I look at values, to keep it really simple, is just, what do I value? You know,
Yes.
what are my values? What do I really value? So an example for me is that I value courage.
Yeah.
So I might find myself in a situation where I'm having a bit of fear about something. Might be about it's often about speaking something, you know, saying something, and then I'll go, hang on a minute, I value courage. So I'm going to let that value lead my behavior, and I'm going to be courageous, and I'm going to say this.
Yes.
Or I'm going to do this, you know. So that's basically what it comes down to. And I think it can be as simple as sitting down and just writing it out. What do I really value? Like, what do I value in my life? You know, I value community, for example. Now, I love the community here. A lot of us don't know each other, but didn't know each other before, but we bond very quickly.
Yeah.
We're having similar life situations here. We do similar work, you know, we value similar things, right? So for me, it's like, I have community. I love
Yes.
community. So it's that sort of stuff. It's like, what do I value?
Yes, exactly. And I think if what I often say to people is just write a whole list down and then just go through the list, and then stop with like 3 for what is most important for you now. And yes, there's lots of other things, but what are the core things? And like what you say about courage is obviously, yes, you are afraid, but at the same time, to push through that is so important. But most people, I think, like you said earlier, don't dare to push through the courage. But we both know that if you push through it, on the other side is all these great things. And it's not as if paradise is awaiting, because I see that every time you have to go through a different uncomfortable thing, but it makes you feel that you're living in alignment with yourself, and you can look yourself in the mirror and you know, hey, I am doing at this moment the best I can, and I'm trying to reach my potential, and I'm not settling for just anything, or feeling a victim and not being proactive. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that one. You know, I can either feel really crap about myself and be in a place where I feel small and, you know, hopeless.
Yeah.
Or I can make a choice. I want to feel alive, you know, like I want to be alive. I want to live my life. That's what I want. So it's like, what am I going to do? Yes, there are no guarantees. I never know what's on the other side. But my guidance, I'm pretty intuitive, and my guidance is really clear, and I know when I have to do something, and I just know. And even in coming here to Bali, you know, that was a huge leap of faith. I didn't know what was here for me. I just knew that I had to do it, and I knew it was time.
Yeah.
Now, has it been what I expected? I don't know. I didn't have a whole heap of expectations. In some ways, probably not. And in other ways, it's been extraordinary, you know, and it's real life. It's everything. It's not paradise when you live somewhere, right? So I'm trying to do my real life here. But my life's completely different from what it was. And I love that.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's because it's for me going from Holland to Australia, and I lived in a few different countries. But for me, it was like, okay, it's always like, what if I don't do it? And 10 years from now, will I regret it? And then it's allowing myself to be able to lose faith. What if I go and it's not what I had in mind? Is it okay for me to come back? And so it's because I think we're often so harsh on ourselves as well.
We are so hard on ourselves. I am too. You know, I had a session with a friend last night. She offered to do this beautiful cacao ceremony for me, actually, just a private one. And she said some words at the end about how well I'd done in something that we'd been talking about. And I thought, yeah, Tricia, like, when was the last time you sat down and went, wow, like I have done an amazing job. And this is what I'm helping my clients to do, you know, but like reminding ourselves, like, can we ever get it wrong? I don't know if we can ever get it wrong if we are trusting ourselves and coming from a place of truth and acting from there. I don't think we can get it wrong. I think on the outside, to other people, it might look strange, it might look weird, it might not look like a linear path, it might not fit the expectations. But, you know, for me, I'm getting it right if I'm moving past all that stuff and I'm listening to my truth and I'm acting on that. To me, that's success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the idea that everyone's truth can be different as well. So just because it's my truth, it doesn't have to be your truth. And anyway, I think that's the good thing about getting older, if I can say it that way, is that I don't really care what other people think, as long as I know I can live with myself and if I know that it's the right decision. Yes, but too many people get so caught up in what other people think, and in the end, where are those people when times are tough or when, you know, things are not good?
Yeah, whose life is it, you know? And I think this is what leadership comes down to. It's self-responsibility, you know, it's full self-responsibility. And that means to our truth, not to responsibility outwardly as far as what other people have told us it should be or should look like. And it's really interesting being here. And I mean, it's opened my eyes a lot to how a lot of people are doing their lives that are so different from how I was brought up, you know, and so different from the world I lived in before. And it makes me question myself. It makes me go, well, is this true just because I've done it that way? Like, what can I see for myself here?
Yeah, and that I think is another thing about leadership, is the ability to reflect on things and not to take things for granted, and also to always have that idea that you are a student and that you can learn, and not it's not a dead-end street. Oh, now I am where I need to be. It's a continuous curiosity towards, hey, I think that, but is that true? Or I do this, but this is right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a constant questioning of self and a reflection and a willingness to do the work and to grow. Really, I think that's what it all comes down to. And I know when we talk about leadership in the traditional sense, and I think that doesn't happen so much now, which is wonderful. You know, it's never about having power over anybody else. You know, it's about giving power to. And I think for us as leaders in our own way, we start with ourselves on that and taking full self-responsibility.
Yeah. And also, what's your thoughts about being a role model? Because I was thinking actually today, you know, often people are role models, even if they're not so aware of it. And it's that little trickle that you can start. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when people come, I'm thinking of an example actually just from this morning from an email that I received from a client, and because people tend to look at me sometimes in that way.
Yeah.
I'm really clear to not, I guess, take that on as anything personal about me. I'm all about how can I help you to be more powerful in yourself. So I had this email this morning from a client as an example, talking about some things that are going on for her in her life. And she said, can I ask you, what am I missing? What am I not seeing here? Now, I'm not going to answer that for her because I don't know. But I can ask a few questions to take it back to herself so she can find those answers for herself. And I think that's how I see it. I don't see it as me being perceived as a certain way and having to live up to anything as far as how other people perceive me.
No, and I think I meant it more that by being being your own leader and standing in your own truth, even though you don't plan to, you are often an inspiration for other people who haven't really um, had the courage to make that step. And so I can imagine that you going to Bali, there will be a lot of people, maybe some people will tell you, maybe some people won't, but thinking, oh my God, look at Tricia, she's done it, and she's making a success out of her life, and she's in Bali doing retreats, working with people who want to develop themselves more. And so it might be a little seed that is then sold. I don't know how to say it in English, that people will start doing the same thing, you know?
Yeah, maybe, and that's great, right? If it's their truth. I think we be the best role models just by being ourselves and being in our truth. I think
absolutely, I agree with you. And what works for someone doesn't always work for someone else. Yeah. And so, well, it is absolutely wonderful talking to you. And I'm just really thinking, what we were been talking about is really the really important thing of being a leader for yourself and to step up, because it seems that if you don't do that, no one else is really going to do it. And for you, what you're saying is really about finding out, who am I? What is it that's important for me? What is it that I really value? And then having the courage to push through your own fears and do it. And do you have any tips on how people can push through their fears?
I think you just have to name it first of all. You know, I think you have to own what's going on for you and have enough self-reflection and awareness around that. I'm not sure that even pushing is the right word. You know, I don't think it's about feel the fear and do it anyway on some level. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but it's like, see it for what it is, you know, and ask yourself the question, you know, I have fears come up and I'll go, is this even true? Like, is this even mine? It's just a story that I've made up. It's a story that I've believed. Where do my values sit in this? What's driving me? Why do I even care? I mean, I have to care. Otherwise I'm not interested in doing anything at all. So, and it's just come back to that and go, you know what, I'm doing it anyway. So that's, it's that kind of stuff. I think if you're not reflective at all, if you're not looking at yourself, if you're not questioning yourself, you've got nowhere to go. Nothing changed.
I think for me, I once read about, I know you've got all those acronyms for fear, but the one that works really well for me is the false evidence appearing real. And so I always say, if I'm really afraid, then I kind of say, okay, what's the story here? Is this true? And actually yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine who's also a coach, and she was saying about how when she's afraid, she looks and she sees the fear in the eye, and sometimes people name fear or have a name for it or a symbol or something. And she said, I just say, well, thank you, fear, for being here, because I know you're really wanting to keep me safe, but I'm okay. I can do this anyway. This is just my brain telling me I should stay safe, but I'm actually safe and I'm going to do it anyway. And I really liked that idea. And she said, like, she saw fear as a little angry thing, like an angry smiley, and then she flipped it around and it was smiling again, because she kind of reassured her own fear. And I thought, oh, I'm going to try that next time. Yeah.
I teach a practice around that with the inner critic. It's the same sort of thing, you know. It's like naming it, giving it a character, asking it, what does it need, what does it want? And it's all about keeping us safe. And sometimes it's useful, right? Sometimes we need to look at what that fear is too. There may well be something in there that we need to take heed of, you know. I think we need to not make it all wrong, but we have to investigate.
Yeah, definitely. And not every fear is there for a reason. And sometimes we need to listen to fear, but you just need to know when to listen and when to let go. And that's not always so clear, because it does come in disguise. And and that's the same with the opposite of it, which is when you were saying that you name it and give it as well, is I've really been working with alter egos and using parts in you as an alter ego to step up and to be the superwoman or Superman. And and it's just really funny how our brain tricks us.
Yeah, our mind. But that's fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah. So well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I've learned so much again, and it's just really inspiring to see that you're living your truth and that you are teaching other people to do that. So when people have been listening and they want to know more about you, where can they find you, Tricia? I know in Bali, but where can they find you online?
Well, I have a fair bit to say on Facebook and Instagram these days, so you can pop in the links, can't you? But
yeah, I will.
I have my website, triciakarp.com, which is about my tantra work, and I also have my powerful speaking work, which I'm kind of more known for having done that for a bit longer, and that's at wisetalk.com.au.
Yeah, and we kind of completely forgot to mention your books, because I only started writing my book because of your books, and I think you wrote several books, didn't you?
I wrote 2 books. Yeah, I've written 2 books.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time and for your energy and for sharing your life lessons with us. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And is there any last thing that you want to give to us?
Oh, gee, a last thing. Thank you, Thilan. I don't know. What's true for you. I think that's what it all comes down to, you know. Follow and live your truth. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to definitely try and follow my truth. Thanks, Tricia.